MLS Aces episode 212. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. I am joined by apparently Timber Jason's replacement up in the top left. Vaughn, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, I wasn't here last week, and you said nobody ever asks how you're doing. How are you doing, Tom?
You know what? You guys just heard me drinking my probiotic water. I'm doing great. I'm living the dream of a 26-year-old right now. Thank you, Vaughn. Sam, how are you? You poured a gingerbread beer?
Yeah, gingerbread bourbon barrel stout, because I'm not drinking probiotic. So, yeah, doing good. Glad to hear you're doing well.
I'm glad. Thank you. I'm glad we're all doing well, guys. I wanted to start off this episode a little differently, run into a little quick trivia because, Sam, you, Jason, and I last week were having a blast talking about the Super Draft, especially Kip Keller. We love you, Kip. He liked the Instagram post, by the way, so shout out to Kip Keller there. But my trivia question does revolve around the Super Draft. So, Vaughn, a little funny, we were talking about the Super Draft before we got on here. But I want to know, or I want to see, in order, if you guys can get correct the number one overall Super Draft picks going back from this year back. I want to see who can go back the farthest. And I'm not going to say who's correct until the end.
Last year. I could do the 5 previous years. I don't know if I could do last year's.
What's going to be really embarrassing is that I just looked up all of this. Like, I literally have a list of every single first draft pick, and I'm probably still going to fail at this.
I'm going to give you guys the teams. So maybe give you
great. I guess that's helpful.
Vaughn, do you want to go first, or Sam? Do you want to go first? Do you guys care?
I don't care.
All right, Vaughn, you said you have a little bit of an advantage, so I'll go for you first.
I know Sam at least the first two. I know at least the first two, so we're good.
I don't think I know the second one. That's the problem.
All right, so Vaughn, starting in 2022, Charlotte FC. If you need team names, ask me. I will go.
Well, Ben Bender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Austin
last season. Oh, dude, I don't know. This is me, right? Like, I'm not just talking out loud.
I mean, you can go. I didn't know. Sorry, I didn't know.
I thought we were going back and forth.
Yeah, I thought we were alternating.
That's fine. Alternate. I like it.
It's a guy from Clemson, isn't it? Like, no? Okay, I don't know. Vaughn, you go.
Okay, Vaughn.
Daniel Pereira from Virginia Tech.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, the school is even more impressive, but yeah,
that's more impressive.
You are correct. Sam, I'm gonna go back to you. 2020 Miami.
2020. My Robbie Robinson.
You are correct. Vaughn, 2019 Cincinnati.
Calvin Harris.
No. Sam, can you get 2019?
2019
Cincinnati.
That wasn't Frankie Amaya, was it?
Yes, it is. It was.
Okay.
Yeah,
good
that's
job,
right. Good
Sam.
call.
Vaughn, 2018 LAFC.
LAFC. Mourinho. I'm forgetting his first name.
You said the last name wrong, but I know who you're talking about. The right player, Joao Moutinho.
Moutinho.
Yeah.
Left back.
You got it. I'll give it to you.
That's good. Went to Akron or something. Yeah.
2017 Minnesota United.
Ooh, Abu Damladi.
There you go. If you didn't get that one, I would have been upset.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Vaughn, 2016 Chicago Fire.
26. You said 2016?
This is good.
2016 Chicago Fire.
Oh man. I'm leaning towards Kappelhoff, but that doesn't sound right. No,
it's so much worse.
Who is
Sam?
it?
Do you want to help him out?
Jack Harrison.
Jack Harrison.
Oh, because he got traded. He was a Chicago player for 5 minutes.
Oh, what is that? I feel terrible for that.
You got it.
Well, I don't think you should feel terrible because he was barely on the team for 5 minutes. I think they traded him during an interview.
Yeah, they did.
That was so bad.
Vaughn.
Now we're getting back there.
2015 Orlando.
Oh.
2015 Orlando. This is getting ugly, guys. This is
Yeah.
bad. This is like really bad.
I can give you his current club.
Okay.
Did he at least play for Orlando?
Besiktas.
Oh,
Kyle Larin.
There you go.
kind of forgot he was a super draft
If
pick.
you guys still want me to keep going, we can do this. But you guys are falling apart a little bit, I'll be honest.
At this point, let's stop at like 2010 or something ridiculous.
All right, let's stop at 2010. Sam, Philadelphia Union 2014. Maybe the last time Philly actually made
Keegan Rosenberry.
No.
No, oh, was it Josh Yara that was he number one?
No. 2014.
No, oh, 2014. Oh.
I will say this. He is going to be probably the only goalkeeper we're going to talk about.
Oh,
Trivia.
Andre Blake, right?
Andre Blake. Yeah. Yep.
Forgot great number one pick, honestly.
A great number one pick. 2013 Vaughn, New England. He is still currently on New England.
I believe that was Andrew Farrell.
You are correct.
Nice.
Sam, good luck with this one, bud. 2012 Montreal Impact.
Montreal Impact.
He is currently on Retired FC.
I know this one.
Retired. Oh, do you? Vaughn, go ahead because I got nothing.
Andrew Wenger.
Oh,
You got it.
That was nice.
If you guys can get 2011 or 2010, and then we'll stop. 2011 was Vancouver. 2010 was Philly. I have never heard of these guys. Go for it, Vaughn.
Vancouver, Omar Salgado.
Yes, Omar Salgado. I've heard of him, but like it just wasn't my recent memory. And then 2010, if you guys have any shot at Philadelphia at 2010.
Remember when Philly was that bad that they were getting all these draft picks?
Remember when they cared about the Super Draft? I'm going to call a timer on you guys. Danny Mwanga.
Oh.
Danny Mwanga.
It rings a bell.
Well, you guys did pretty good. I didn't even see people commenting. Oh, hey, Del, how are you? Del, you got Robbie Robinson, yes. But yeah, I mean, you guys, you fell apart at 2021, Sam. I'm really going to say you set the tone early for.
Well, like that was, we didn't have a college. We didn't really have a college season to like prep for that draft, right? Because the 2020 season got canceled. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? Like, didn't get to watch anything.
It's fine.
That's my excuse.
I just wanted to kind of have an excuse to talk about the MLS Super Draft history a little bit because I wanted to do a little bit of digging. But thank you guys for playing along with me there. I appreciate it.
Nice one,
and thank you.
Like, those are some deep cuts.
Vaughn killed it. Vaughn
I don't know. There were some iffy ones there too. I don't. That was not ideal. Yeah, Jack Harrison.
But let's dive into the actual soccer. But before we do really quick, I just want to give a major quick shout out to Soccer 90 for sponsoring MLS Aces and sponsoring the MLS Aces podcast. Guys, go make soccer90.com the primary source for all your Major League Soccer, U.S. national team, international club gear from jerseys, scarves, hats, and more. Go check them out. And if you are an MLS Aces listener, if you guys are an MLS Aces co-host, that's the same exact token. You can receive 25% off your entire purchase when you use promo code MLS Aces at checkout. MLS Aces, MLSACES at checkout. And just kind of going to throw that out there as well that there are some exclusions that may apply. So just please be aware of that. But most of the items on soccer90.com, you can receive 25% off your total order. So thank you to Soccer90. Let's talk about soccer. Let's talk about what's going on around Major League Soccer, U.S. soccer going on right now. And Sam, I think the MLS Super Draft conversation kind of leads perfectly into the first topic that you wanted to bring up, and that is the recent article that dropped from The Athletic, more specifically Jeff Ruder at The Athletic, kind of talking about MLS Next Pro, the roster construction that's going to be going on there, and really kind of how MLS Next Pro is going to operate with Major League Soccer in total. So, Sam, you kind of want to run through some of the differences that these rosters are going to be operating with compared to Major League Soccer. Please go for it.
Yeah, so Jeff Ruder dropped this article 2 or 3 days ago, and I thought it was really, really good. Just laying out these big differences from what's going to be the officially third division in U.S. soccer, with the first division that we all know and love and don't understand as best as we can. So, like, these big differences, there's not going to be a salary cap at all. which is going to be huge to just allow these teams to kind of figure out roster construction. With that, there's also no maximum salary. There's no minimum salary. You could sign a guy for dumb cheap. You could sign a guy for an insane amount of money, and it doesn't really matter. With this being a developmental league, you're not going to see insane contracts, obviously, but it gives these teams room to maneuver, as it were. And one of the big things I really like, players get to sign contracts with the individual teams. They're not going to sign with the league like you do in MLS. This allows for these players to have more flexibility. They can kind of go and display their services for other teams. But once you sign a contract, you're owned by that team, not by the league. So when a team wants to buy you, they're not trading, draft picks, because there's no draft for the third division. There's no trading for allocation money. You will be traded or sold like in the rest of the world with real money, exchanging hands. You just can't trade away these guys. And so there's also 7 international roster spots, and these can be sold like in USL for money as well. And those kind of maneuver around for these teams. You have to have 12 contracted players, minimum out of a 24-ish, could be 32-man roster. They're not really sure from the sources. So that's going to give a lot of experience to these academy players, because with 12 that have to be contracted, then that's 12 more minimum that can just be academy guys that are going to get more playing time. MLS teams don't have rights to any of these guys, except for if they got drafted in the super draft. So the super draft is still going to place hold, because these guys can get drafted and then drop to the third division for playing time. They can also, if they're homegrown or academy players, or if they have discovery rights, which is super dirty and an ugly way of going about it that I don't want to really go into. But that one I don't think will be used as much unless you have some insane youth player who's coming over to play in MLS Next Pro. Oh, and then, this got added too. MLS clubs can't stash their DPs, U22 initiative players, or high-level TAM players on that roster. So Miami couldn't have fixed their roster at all with an MLS Next Pro team. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this. I think, it's giving a lot of flexibility to these teams. All these current teams, except for Rochester, are MLS teams. So I'm sure they're going to have certain construction rules that they put in place to better their professional teams. And then Rochester, that's going to be just fun to kind of see how they go about it, because they're going to have to start from empty scratch, don't have an academy, but upstate New York's a hotbed for soccer. So that'll be pretty cool.
Well, Sam, awesome point to go into Rochester first. And I think that's why MLS Next Pro is operating more as like a traditional global league that, right? With all money, you can't trade allocation, you can't trade super draft picks, because Rochester doesn't have that. Rochester doesn't have allocation picks. Rochester isn't drafting in the super draft. So, when you add more independent teams in the future, which is what MLS Next Pro has stated that they want to do, you can't have half the teams, loaning down super draft picks, or trading super draft picks, across the league, and then the other half doesn't have the opportunity to trade to do the same. So I like that this is operating independently. Obviously, you can sit here and say, this Athletic can sit here and say that Fort Lauderdale, FCF, or whatever the letters are at the end of their name, are going to operate completely separate from Inter Miami, whatever. But at the end of the day, Inter Miami is operating how Fort Lauderdale is going to play on the field, how Fort Lauderdale are going to kind of construct their roster and everything like that. So yes, it's separate, but that mommy and daddy club are also going to be telling the kids club everything that's going on. So I do like that they're trying to keep it independent. I just definitely kind of am getting a little bit of a vibe of there are going to be teams who are going to abuse this, have this just be a 2-team the same way a lot of 2 teams operate in USL, don't give a shit about it, and just allow super draft picks to play and gain minutes, right? Hopefully 1 or 2 work out for the first team. There are going to be teams who do take advantage of this, and I think the teams that do are going to have more of a pipeline, more players accelerate, and more players get ready to be playing at a higher level once they hit an MLS field. But I really wish there was a little bit more of a push for a salary cap minimum. I understand that there is no salary cap minimum there to allow some roster flexibility, but I wish there was just maybe a super low minimum just to kind of push these clubs to kind of care a little bit. I don't know. Just my thoughts. Vaughn, do you have anything you want to kind of dive into on this or your thoughts with it?
I mean, one of my specialties is my deep dive knowledge of MLS roster rules. And I immediately look at this. And of course, we don't know what all the rules are. But if it's as baseline as it's been outlined here, like there's a lot of room for teams to make some loophole moves. And I think that's going to be the part that's going to be drawn into question. You know, like right off the top in my head, I'm like, all right, Brenner, go spend the $15 million, stash him on your 2 team for 6 months, transfer him up to your first team for $50,000, and now he's no longer a DP on your books. Like,
so the one thing, Vaughn, the one thing about that I feel like you can't do is that the MLS roster still has to be in MLS roster like constraints,
compliance.
Right? So you still have to have the compliance. Thank you. So you still have to be under the 3 DPs, still be under the salary cap, everything like that. So if you can,
but that's what I'm saying is that if you can eliminate the transfer fee. Right. If you can eliminate the transfer fee from the calculation for a DP or a U22 guy, right? Like Brenner's maybe a bad example because he's technically U22, but you could, in theory, get a guy, pay the entire transfer fee, even pay him a chunk of his salary up front, and then say, once we get you to the senior team, you're going to be on a 2-year contract for $100,000. And that's what your MLS contract is going to read as, is $100,000, because we already paid you the $15 million up front on the 2 team.
I didn't think about that. You could
That's
totally
interesting,
do that. Because there is a lot of contract flexibility. You could pay Brenner $20 million to play for FC Cincinnati too. Transfer, like you said, $50,000 to bring him up to FC Cincinnati, and then pay him $80,000. And
so
he's
so that's what I'm saying. We've got to see what the rules shake out to be, because right now, right off the top, that's what I would do. I would hide the transfer fee, throw it over there where there's no salary cap and minimum max salary, throw the entire transfer fee there, and then the MLS club is clean of it.
I think, Vaughn, you're just interviewing to be like a general manager of an MLS Next Pro team.
Yeah.
I think that's really what your goal is from this conversation right now.
You said it.
I mean, like, honestly, honestly, you're not wrong. You know, like, I came into this because there was a lot of conversation about stashing players away on MLS 2 teams and everything like that. And I guess technically, no, you can't stash a DP on an MLS Next Pro team. But if you do it the way Vaughn just laid it out, then I guess technically you can. I would just say, like, I feel like that comes into like later down the line contracts of, you know, the player getting paid the next season or 2 years down the line, whatever it may be. But if they're happy with, you know, it comes down to a little bit of nuances, I think, when you get past that initial season. But I think for the most part, Vaughn, like, you hit it on the head. And obviously, you know, these are early reports coming from The Athletic and Jeff Ruder. And I'm sure, like you said, like you guys both said, like, these things are going to get kind of finalized a little bit, constructed a little bit more. And I'm sure that if there is nobody sitting within Major League Soccer headquarters saying exactly what Vaughn just said, there are bigger issues on the line here. So thank you, Vaughn, for poking the biggest hole, I think, in that. So I like that.
I'm assuming they're going to put protections in place, but who knows?
Oh yeah, hopefully.
Because they did come out and say that transfers are going to operate like how MLS operated with the USL Championship MLS 2 teams. Like, you can call players back and forth pretty much, and like nothing can happen to you, which I hate. I just hate that rule in general. I think if you're going to loan a player, you loan a player for 6 months for whatever. But I mean, look, I guess if they're playing in your 2 team and they're playing in the same state and city, like, why not? But
I think long term they're going to do it the same way that they do for like NHL. Like, NHL has 2-way contracts where you have guys that are allowed to have free movement between the AAA side and the senior team. So I wouldn't be shocked if they eventually do some sort of rule where it's like, yeah, you're allowed to have 5 players that are two-way players, and their contract allows them to jump freely between the two squads.
I feel like you have to. I like that. I like that a lot. I just feel like there's at some point you have to financially I don't want to sit here and say at some point you have to financially control these clubs and don't allow them to abuse an extra potentially 30-something roster spots, right? But at the same exact time, how many times have we sat on this podcast and say we want MLS clubs to spend and have more roster availability and all that, right? This is just a tricky area where I really would just like to see MLS Next Pro operate as its own league and really have everything be super separate. And if you want to have a player play for there, you have to send them on a long-term loan. It can't be a game loan, but we'll see. I mean, I like the kind of like you have X amount of allocated roster spots where you can kind of bring them both ways, and everyone else on the roster has to play for that team unless you officially sign them and bring them up, or you sign them to one of those open roster spots. So there's a lot that I think needs to be unpacked, and the season's not too far away. So I think MLS is going to have to kind of kick it into high gear, and I think we'll talk about the shortened off season and everything like that in a little bit. But anything else on MLS Next Pro, these roster rules that draft, what you like to see from MLS Next Pro in the future or kind of coming up in the next few weeks or anything like that? No,
just more clarity.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean these are
honestly,
all just from sources. These aren't reports from the league yet. So this is all up in the air, and things could very much change after the reports come out and they see the reaction.
And people react to it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a big part of it.
I've never thought about it I've never thought about stuff getting leaked for fan reaction to see how fans are going to react to something, and then we're going to change that. I've never thought about it up until probably 2-ish years ago, but it makes total sense. Maybe that's why I'm not a marketing person or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just why I'm dumb and I'm sitting.
Let's float this bad idea out there and see what shakes
see how
out.
It goes.
See how we it's all the fake MLS logos that got floated out there, and do we like this? No, okay, we're gonna pull it back.
Oh, but that wasn't a real design. It was leaked.
For you guys, for Vaughn, Sam, for you guys, I'm gonna skip past this next one and I'm gonna throw that in at the end. So we're gonna jump into the next one. And kind of going back to a topic that Sam wants to talk about, and kind of going back into the super draft. Minnesota United signing free agent striker Abu Danladi. I like this move a lot, and Sam, I know why you like this move. I know you're a fan of the super draft and everything like that, but
that's not why really I like happy. This one, but yeah,
I know, but it's part of it. And I mean, I'm happy he's back with Minnesota United for the 2022 season. Obviously, Abu Danladi back in 2017, like we said to start this episode, was selected number 1 overall by Adrian Heath and Minnesota in the MLS Super Draft. In 2019, was selected in the expansion draft by Nashville. Now he's coming back home to Minnesota. Adrian Heath came out. There was reports he came out and he was very ecstatic bringing Danladi back home because he feels Danladi is a super talented player and he didn't want to either lose him in 2019. The 26-year-old has 95 games played between Minnesota and Nashville in his career, 14 goals and 7 assists there. He's joining a Minnesota roster that now will have 3 strikers on the roster, so shout out to them for building up that roster pool. I am not even going to try to say the name of the South African striker that they signed, but he is a very talented young South African striker. That's all I will say. Sam, Abu Danladi, dive into it. Talk about him. I want to hear why you were so interested in Mr. Danladi.
It's kind of like a redemption story in a way. I didn't pick this because I think this is going to be this major, it could be this major move for Minnesota. And it's good to have an MLS ready guy on your roster at striker, especially who can score goals. But this is a guy who fans weren't big on in Minnesota. He had a really stagnant second season. Pulling up his stats right now, his second season he had 1 goal, in all competitions. In his third season he had 2 goals, but in his first season it was 8 goals in it's 27 overall appearances. So 8 goals in 19 games to start with. He started very well in MLS for a really terrible team in their first year. And he got picked up in the expansion draft. That's fine. went and played in Nashville. I think coming back, Adrian Heath, like I was reading his comments that he had on this. He's stoked to have Dunlawdy back. And he says that if he can get him playing back in that same vein of form when he scored like 8 goals in like 19 games or whatever it was, that we're going to have real talent on our hands in Minnesota and really good things going forward. And I do kind of see what he's talking about. Like, I think Dunlawdy was drafted number 1 overall for a reason. I think he's very talented, and I think he'll do really well in Minnesota, a team who's going to just be looking for goals to rebuild that front line that was very, very good 2 years ago. And otherwise, I just want to see him do well. I like this guy a lot. Like, I don't know. That's just it for me.
No, I'm with you on that. Like, I think, one, I like the story to it, right? He's coming back to the club that drafted him. He's coming back to the head coach that drafted him, had a lot of faith in him, and he had his best year under, right? I also like the move because I hate when Minnesota in the past, 2 years, when they never really had a striker option or a striker was hurt, and they threw Robin Lod up top to just play like a false 9 that never worked out. Like, Robin Lod will get you sure, he'll get you 8 goals a season and he'll hit 1 banger and it'll be great and it'll work for a game. I just don't think he is your backup striker option or your starting striker option. Yeah. Obviously, right now they have Adrian who did well last year, and I'd like to see him kind of see how a full season plays out for him in Minnesota. But if right now, if Boo Dunlawdy is your backup striker, and Adrian Heath has all the faith in the world in this guy, I think you're set up in a good spot, right? A guy who I think just needs consistency, who just needs to play. And if he's making an 18 every single week, and he's coming off the bench every single week, and kind of eating up minutes that way, or gets a spot start, I don't hate it. I'm not sitting here and saying, Sam, you're not saying this either, but we're not sitting here and saying that Boo Dunlawdy is going to come out and score 20-something goals next year, and this is this crazy move that's going to impact the season so much. But I think just for him and for Minnesota, this is a solid move to really just keep, just to get things a little bit back to a status quo, because Minnesota's roster is a little shaky right now. Vaughn, anything about Dunlawdy, or do we want to move forward into your neck of the woods?
I'll just add that it feels a little bit kind of like the Dom Baji back to Colorado move.
Right? Oh, yeah, it does.
Where it's okay, he's going to go there. He'll thrive in Minnesota. That's where his
that's the only spot he scores goals.
Yeah,
right. But then I also don't know if it's kind of like a Jeremy Abobasi Portland situation where you've got this guy that is real quality and has the potential to be tearing it up, and then he's missing out on minutes because he's number 2.
Yeah, true. I do have to say that I think Abobasi failed in Portland because they had 5 strikers on the roster. You had Niashgoda, you had Felipe Mora, you had Abobasi, and I think one more kind of big one I can't think of off the top of my head, but you had a DP, I think a DP at high level TAM player, and then the dude you got in the expansion draft in Abobasi. In the super draft in Abobasi. So I think Abobasi was kind of set up to fail there, and he wasn't giving consistent minutes. I'd like to see Abobasi do well right now at San Jose. I'm pretty sure he's still stashed away on their roster. So I'd like to kind of see how that goes for him. But Vaughn, let's go to Charlotte, because last week we missed all of our Charlotte conversation because you weren't on the pod.
It was very lonely.
What was going on?
I'm so sorry, guys. You did a great job talking about Bender there, and then shifting focus to Kip Keller. It's fine.
Bender, Kip Keller, only people who mattered in that draft. I mean, really,
all about alliteration on this podcast.
They sound like 2 evil villains that are going to always be in a fight against each other.
Battle it out for MLS supremacy. Charlotte FC. They made major news this past week by selling midfielder Riley McGree to the EFL Championship side, Middlesbrough. Obviously, the dude never played a game for Charlotte because Charlotte's never played a game. But many people, I saw some fans who were upset about this because many fans were saying McGree was one of their better players, one of their better midfielders. Why did we sell him? On the flip side, you guys got reportedly a lot of cash for the dude. I think I saw the reported number from Stan Stachko coming in at $4 million. That could rise up to $6 million. I saw numbers were larger, reports were larger than that. I don't think there is a steady report out there, so I went with Stachko because trusted source. So let's call it $4 million right now. That could rise up to $6 million. Vaughn, your opinion, you're obviously in the Charlotte news. Did you like the move for the McGree sale?
Personally, I did. Yeah. I mean, to me, the hot word here is savvy, right? Like that's what I've been saying over and over and over again. I feel like a broken record. But at the end of the day, Charlotte went and spent $590,000 reportedly. I think that was in the same Athletic article. $590,000 to acquire McGree. And then when they sent him to Birmingham City, they were covering his salary. So when I say they, I mean Birmingham City. So the cost for Charlotte was very, very low here. And McGree, after having his really successful stint at Birmingham, wanted to stay in England, wanted to stay in Europe, feeling that that's his end goal. So I think it became pretty clear from the player that he wanted to stay there and ultimately further his career in England, in Europe, in that part of the world, and his shots were better staying there than coming to Charlotte. So for the player, happy for him, right? Like he's ending up in the exact situation he wanted to be in, and for Charlotte, they are getting a massive return here. The numbers. If they're at $6 million, it's a little bit lower than the Atuesta deal, but it's essentially the Edward Atuesta deal. Edward Atuesta just went to Palmeiras for $4 million that can increase up to $7 million. So if Charlotte just sold this guy that never played a single minute at the same level as another midfielder that was best 11 quality, that's crazy good business. And their flexibility that they're going to have in now getting an additional up to 1.05 million GAM that they can convert from the sale and still have money left over to go towards other transfer fees. It's huge. In evaluating and watching McGree play at Birmingham City, I had some concerns, honestly, about him finding it onto the field. He was by far the best attacking option coming out of the midfield for the guys that are currently on the roster for Charlotte. But in that midfield grouping right now, which includes Alan Franco, Sergio Ruiz, and Jordi Alcivar, I was concerned that if McGree was on the field, he was going to force one of those three guys off, or that McGree was going to struggle to find minutes with those other three on the roster. So there was going to be competition, which is always good, and you've got to find minutes for everybody. But McGree struggled initially to find minutes in the English Championship. He had to work his way up, really with his second manager there to start earning minutes. So at the end of the day, it was like, hey, he's like fringe championship quality. Oh, now he finally got his opportunity. He's really, really good in the championship, and his value skyrocketed. So Charlotte benefited from that. So credit to their scouting team, credit to the front office making the call. I think the intent was for him to still come back to Charlotte until Celtic and Middlesbrough really just made offers that, I mean, how do you turn that down? You cannot turn that down.
And I think that's what I said to someone on Twitter who replied to my tweet about McGree, and they were just like, now we're left with like our best midfielder. At the time, they said McGree was not you guys' best midfielder, like gone from the roster, and like we're gonna sign a bunch of like below average MLS players. Obviously, that person went like super, I think, dramatic with it. But I think at the end of the day, yes, I think
account.
Vaughn's like fucking moves. But no, I think when I was looking at the roster, when I was putting together my depth charts that I have for all the MLS teams, I didn't have McGree as the starter. I don't know if I'm wrong with that. I had Alan Franco, I had Alcivar, and I had Sergio Ruiz as the midfield three. I don't know if I'm wrong with that, but I just didn't see McGree as the starter. And I think for any MLS team right now, I think if you are LAFC, if you are FC Dallas, if you are whoever, you can't turn down $4 million for a player to make a move to Europe, especially a young player. And especially for an MLS team who's never actually fielded players on a field before, you can't turn down $4 million for a player. Like, especially Vaughn, like with what you're saying with what they paid for him, like this is just great business. And if McGree wants to play in England and he wants to play in the championship, the dude also just jumped like 7 spots up the table too. So good for him at the same exact point. So I think this is a win-win for everybody. The player gets what he wants. The club gets money. Obviously Middlesbrough gets a player that they were after, and I think everyone's happy at the end of the day.
Well, and Charlotte FC is getting their name in the mix with clubs like Celtic and high level teams in the championship. So, right, like they're starting to establish a reputation of a team that can sell a guy for that kind of money, and they're scouting guys early. Like, great, if the scouting team keeps finding guys that early that they can acquire for $590,000, and then not 18 months later can sell for $4 to $6 million. That's crazy good business. Like, that's a really good sign of business. Things to come. Now, granted, some of that is also his value went up because they saw proof of concept in the championship. That's another story for another day, because his value probably would have been the same in MLS, but that's perceived value, right? But yeah, I'm happy for McGree. I'm happy for Charlotte. I think it's an opportunity, right? Like, he's a prototypical number 10. Like, that's really what his strength is, but I didn't feel he was a playmaking number 10. So you look at some of the other number 10s in the league. I didn't feel McGree was going to be our Ladero. He wasn't going to be our Valeri, our Javinko. So at the end of the day, I think it was an opportunity for Charlotte to cash out and build another way, and they're going to take that and run with it.
And how many times have we said it on this podcast in the off season of, like, MLS teams, for them to start getting the money that Dallas is getting, or, even Colorado, I think, is getting to an extent, you have to start kind of building your resume in Europe with sales or player loans or whatever it may be. NYCFC is not going to get Ricardo Pepi money for James Sands, because NYCFC's never truly sold a developed finished product to a European club. Sure, you can say, Giovanni Reina was an NYCFC Academy player, the same way Weston McKennie was an FC Dallas Academy player. Never stepped foot on the club, or for like the senior club team level. So MLS clubs need to start getting players out there. Yes, their first deal may have to kind of take a step back. You're not getting the cash for it right away, but down the line, your third, fourth, fifth player that you develop, you're going to get the cash for it. And I'm not saying Riley McGree is a Charlotte FC developed player, but in the same exact token, that's a player that this club, this scouting office found, put their confidence and trust in, and look at how good he did. Okay, maybe Charlotte knows how to scout. Maybe Charlotte has good players. Let's go look at Charlotte and who's producing the best for them and everything like that. So that's, like you're saying, Vaughn, I think that's exactly what Charlotte needed to do. And how could you turn down that money?
And I think also, just one more note on it. I think also part of it, like, how did Charlotte end up securing Riley McGree in the first place, right? They were able to pay a transfer fee for him, and they found a suitable team in the English Championship. McGree had acknowledged and said, I want to play in Europe. I want to play in England. That's my pinnacle. And they ultimately got him into a situation where he was playing in England, right? So they were the middleman that ultimately was able to make that occur and happen.
Yeah.
And said, hey, if it doesn't work out in England, you're going to have a great opportunity in MLS. MLS is a growing league. You're going to be a part of this project. You're going to be a part of something new. But at the end of the day, they were the ones that created the avenue for him to England. And then McGree took the bull by the horns and had success once he got there. So I think that's part of the whole thing, is also, like, it's a good sign to see that an expansion club can step in, can fill that role. And it's something I hope more MLS teams try to do down the road and use it as a roadmap now.
Also, like, owning up to promises, right? Like, clearly they probably had a conversation of, like, Riley, we're going to do our best if you produce and play for us, probably at the time. And if you do what we know you're capable of, we'll get you to England. We'll get you that opportunity overseas. Something that maybe the Colorado Rapids did not do for Kellyn Acosta. That is a professional transition, folks.
That was a transition.
LAFC. They traded $1.1 million in GAM upfront and $400,000 in future incentives for former Colorado Rapids midfielder and the USMNT midfielder Kellyn Acosta. But the money, I feel like, usually is the talking point that we would have on this podcast. That's a lot of money, but there is a lot of drama around this, and I'm interested to get your guys' points of view. So I'm gonna kind of lay out what happened, and I want to hear your thoughts, because I kind of laid out my thoughts a little bit on Twitter already. So, like I said, money, LAFC got Kellyn Acosta, Colorado Rapids got a lot of money in allocation. Apparently, Kellyn Acosta really had a preferred destination to end up in Europe, like most players do. Kellyn Acosta's in his prime, wants to go play in Europe. That is what has been laid out there. Colorado did not want to, and this is all reports, I'm just going out with facts. Colorado did not want to send him to Europe because that means the Rapids would have to pay some money back to the league. He is not a homegrown player for the Colorado Rapids, so they would have to pay money to the league for a transfer for the profit that they made. So Colorado went and transferred him to LAFC, which was an inter-MLS move. So that means they get to kind of keep all the general allocation money there. And if I'm wrong with any of this, because I feel like I might be saying one thing incorrect in there, I feel like they get to keep all the general allocation money for the transfer. Please correct me, but they get to keep the general allocation money in the transfer, and they get all the money. They get to make their profit, and they get to get rid of a player who clearly did not want to be on the Colorado Rapids roster. There are people coming out who are in support of the Rapids and saying they're just doing business. They're doing what they need to do as a club. People who are coming out and saying they screwed over Kellyn Acosta. Kellyn needs to, do what he can to get to Europe, blah, blah, blah. And I always feel like there's a gray area in between all of that. So Sam, I'm going to start with you since this is one of the topics you wanted to talk about. What is your take on any of this? You can go into the drama, you can go into the actual move, play on the field, whatever you want. Please, I want to hear it.
Here, I'll start with the actual move because I think that otherwise I'm just not going to talk about it. So let me start there. It's a lot of money for Colorado right up front, and good for them for picking it up. They were clearly trying to ship him somewhere, and for LA to have that money and put it up is really nice. An LA team who's going to need someone like Kellyn Acosta on the team. That being said, I like to consider myself pretty pro player at the end of the day. Like, if you had to pick one, I'm more pro player than pro team. And it's pretty tough for a guy who's, well, I would say is like paid his dues in MLS, didn't have the best time in Dallas, got shipped out like when everyone was talking about him going to Europe first. Got shipped out to Colorado, which was a really weird move at the time because Colorado was terrible when he got sent there. And really picked himself up, got him back into the men's national team conversation, has become one of the players who's played the most minutes for the men's national team this season. And I feel like he just kind of got screwed up. Like, he got really screwed over on that one. If reports are true that he had offers from Europe. Now, I can't confirm, obviously, any of those. Other than what he said and what other people have also said. I'd like to think that Kellyn Acosta is not blowing smoke because he has to move to Los Angeles and play soccer in California. So I'd like to think he's probably telling the truth. Now, it's unfortunate for him. It's smarter for the team. The way MLS is laid out for selling players and, like we were talking about league contracts and that kind of stuff. So it goes back to the league and then everyone gets a bit of that chunk of change, and that's very hard on the league, or very hard on individual teams, not hard on the league. So I'm pretty bummed out for Kellyn Acosta. That being said, I think he's going to be fine in Los Angeles and have a good season. So I don't know. To tie this back to Riley McGree, because I did have a point as well. The team seemed to be really pissed off Vaughn that he left. Is that because I'm reading this Athletic article with the sporting director that's saying that he became a better player and then decided he doesn't want to come back to us unless he has to, so we're going to get rid of him. If that wasn't good enough for us, so we didn't like that. So that's
I heard from both Cornetta, that's Zoran Cornetta, he's the sporting director, and then also they had the head coach Miguel Angel Ramirez. I think they both made it pretty clear publicly that they only want players that want to be in Charlotte to be in Charlotte. So I think they got the message pretty loud and clear from Riley that his intent was, I want to be in England. I want to play over here. I'm not ready to leave England and head to the Americas. I'd like to see if you can work a deal here. Well, then at that point, once they understood that and knew that, the decision was made for Charlotte. They could not keep him because at that point his heart wasn't going to be in it. His mind was still going to be in, and his heart was still going to be in England. That's what I've read and understood from the team, is that it was like, no, Riley made up his mind that he wanted to be in England, and we had to find a way to make it happen because he wasn't going to be 100% of himself once he was here.
I see. So I think that's very fair. Good for Charlotte for doing the best thing for the player then, and keeping him in Europe and also making a profit for them. That's very good.
And,
Colorado,
and sending a message to other people coming to Charlotte.
Absolutely.
If you're coming to Charlotte, you're
you
here for Charlotte. There. You're here for this team, this city,
the club
everything.
Too. Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
Ethos. It's establishing ethos.
Good. Now, Del in the comments says that Acosta's not good enough to go to Europe, and I wholeheartedly disagree. I just disagree with you, Del. And
I do. Sorry, Del. Disagree with you as well.
I think he can play in Europe. I don't think he's going to play for like Bayern Munich, but I think he would be fine in Belgium, or he'd be top tier in Scotland probably. But he'd be a fine championship player.
Your mouth.
He'd be really good there. He'd be so good there. Come on. He'd be so good on like Celtic. Come on. But I think he'd be fine in Europe, and I think he'll be fine in Los Angeles. Maybe LA will have a different approach if they get a bid, not this summer because they spent a lot of money on him this year, but maybe next offseason.
I think, look, I'm a big Kellyn Acosta fan. I like him, and Sam, similar to you, I always feel like I'm pro player because at the end of the day, there's billionaires behind these clubs who are going to make their money, right? And everything like that.
Correct.
I would have liked to have seen the Rapids do what's best for Kellyn, send him off to Europe. And from a U.S. men's national team point of view, a selfish fan point of view, would have liked to have seen kind of Kellyn take that next step, develop, play in Europe up for an upcoming World Cup. Just straight up, I would have loved to have seen that. But at the end of the day, I think this is where a lot of players in other sports that you hear, go on talk shows and interviews and everything like that say, and this is where they understand that the blah, 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 the NBA, the NFL, the MLB is a business. The MLS is just as much of a business as all those other leagues. And at the end of the day, these businesses, these smaller entities inside that business, the Rapids, every other club, they need to do what is best for them financially, and they will always do what is best for them financially. And to the point of Charlotte, right? Like, Charlotte is doing what's best for the player because also at the same exact time it benefits the club. Charlotte is getting a ton of money. Charlotte, Vaughn, like you're saying, is also setting a precedent of we want dudes who are going to be here. If you're mentally not here and if your heart's not in playing here, we will ship you out of town type of deal, right? So I think you're setting a precedent. You're getting a ton of money. So that's why for Charlotte it works. But for Colorado, it comes across as the club being selfish and the club doing everything for money and the club doing, like screwing over Kellyn Acosta and all of that. And yes, Kellyn Acosta has his drama around him with his exit from Dallas and now an exit from Colorado. So is that reputation going to follow him? Yes. Is that fair? I don't personally think so, but there is a lot to unpack here, but I think LAFC is getting a very good player. He did come out with the statement that he is excited to play for LAFC and he is excited to put it all on the line for LAFC. And I do wholeheartedly believe that. I don't know if he's in direct Edward Atuesta replacement in quality, but I think he's going to come in and I think he could play a very good number 6 if they decide to play him there. I know that I saw some people saying Ilie Sanchez would be a backup. Kellyn would come in as the starting 6. Maybe you start, Kellyn and Ilie, or however it goes. He's going to come in. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He's going to play very, very well. Vaughn, do you have any comments you want to make on or off the field about Kellyn Acosta, the Rapids, LAFC?
Well, first of all, I think you talked about the amount of money that would be different if he was transferred versus traded. I'm pretty sure that number's 95% to the team, 5% to the league under the new rules.
So I'm incorrect about that. Yeah.
But if that's the case, that's really messed up, Colorado.
Well, but the thing is, right now, right, like they're saying that it's 1.1 mil GAM up front and up to 400,000 in incentive-based stuff. So we're talking 1.5 million. So the question is, were there any transfers on the table for 1.5 million? And I don't know that there was, right? Like, we don't know that there's that interest that was a $1.5 million transfer. As much as Kellyn wants to go overseas, that doesn't mean that money was coming to Colorado. So they had to probably make what was their best decision. And for LAFC, they're like you mentioned, they're filling a hole that's left by Edward Atuesta. And to me, this is where they're able to make a pretty net neutral move. Because like I just said, the Edward Atuesta move that was just $4 million, they should be able to convert 1.05 million of that to GAM. So if they're converting every dime of that, they're basically taking 1.05 and they're spending 1.1. Right? So they're taking
if you
Edward.
want to take that a step further, Mark Anthony K, I think, was like $50,000 more that they received back. So they pretty much paid $50,000 for Kellyn Acosta because of the K trade a year ago.
Right. So they get to make an initial upfront expense of 0 GAM. Like they still are left with all that other money in the bank. And they've got 400,000 coming to them in the future. And it fills a hole for LAFC. And Colorado gets a guaranteed return that they don't know that they were going to get that transfer return right now. I agree. If there were legit offers of 1.5 million on the table, then you got to do what's best for the player and let him go where he wants to go. And it's not like the club benefits one way or the other. Then if it's like, oh, well, we're picking GAM over cash, then that's a conflict and that's something that needs to be resolved. But I don't think that's really what was going on here.
And that's all true, Vaughn. That's definitely true. We don't know the offers that came in from Europe for the Rapids. Was it an offer of $200,000 for Kellyn Acosta, right? At the end of the day, that does change the narrative a little bit. It does change the larger picture. But, at the end of the day, it's going to be he said, she said. It's going to be Kellyn Acosta's word against the Rapids. The Rapids are never going to come out and make an official statement. No club in Europe that did have an offer in on him is going to come out and make an official statement. So, I think this is just going to be another kind of little bit of like a dark cloud that follows Kellyn Acosta at the LAFC. But I do think he is going to be an awesome fit in LAFC. I really do kind of like the midfield there now with how that's developing. So I'm excited to see how that plays out. And for Colorado, it was a very crowded midfield, right? Like Kellyn Acosta getting out of that midfield means he's going to get a ton more minutes at LAFC, especially now if Cole Bassett goes to Feyenoord. There's all the rumors and reports that are coming out. It frees up a lot of space for the Colorado Rapids midfielders. Jack Price and Mark Anthony K are probably going to get a ton of minutes. And I saw someone tweet this, and I fully agree. Last year's Super Draft pick, Philip Mayaka, he is going to get a ton of minutes if Bassett is gone. If Kellyn Acosta is obviously gone, so he is going to get a ton of minutes. I'm excited to kind of see what he can do because everyone was talking him up last year, and I think maybe a year being a professional and now kind of stepping into an open hole, I think he could be a special player in 2022. Anything else about either of these teams or Kellyn Acosta, guys?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, one last thing. So I just looked it up. Kellyn Acosta's league contract, because as we've been talking about, it's a league contract, not a team contract, expires at the end of the year, December 31st. So he'll be able to, in July, start talking about if he wants to go to Europe on a free and move that way if he really wants to. Like he'll be out of contract.
Chris Mueller to Hibs.
No, I don't want him to go to Hibs. It's fine. We have good defensive midfielders at Hibs. It's fine. I think Kellyn Acosta would be pretty solid in Portugal. Like I think he'd be pretty good out there.
I'm leaning like Belgium, like follow Mark McKenzie.
Yeah, go to. I could see him on an upper tier Belgium team. Ghent, a Genk. Bruges already has a couple of Americans on it. I don't know, but I think Kellyn Acosta is going to make his move in January next year. He's probably not going to sign a new contract with this league.
I think the only negative part about that is like it's after the World Cup. Like not that like it means nothing, but like this is his prime year's World Cup is 2026.
Yeah, because what is he? He's 28, right? So like
27.
27. He was born in 95. Oh shoot, he's a year younger than me. Wait, what?
He's 26.
He's 26. Okay. So
yeah.
So he's this next. He'll still have a shot at the next World Cup cycle.
Yeah,
he'll be 31.
Probably
30-ish, 31. So
that'll
be tough.
It just sucks from our point of view as fans. We want to see the USMNT win. We like see Kellyn Acosta, talk shit to Mexico before a PK. All that stuff. We want to see that. Just
I think
not
for him, he's gonna if nothing else, he's gonna want to make that move anyway. So
I think so.
So I think he's gonna do it for him.
Yeah, exactly. Go like
that's
Chris
what's
Mueller
important.
did. Go do it for you. Go do it for you. Let's talk rosters in Flux. And Vaughn, you
Talking
brought
so
this
much
point
shit
up
about Scotland.
in our Slack chat, and it's a really good point. And so I kind of want to have you lead this, and you kind of talk about where your mind is at with rosters and Flux.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how to like break it all down, but there's this like feeling, and the numbers back it up, that there are way more players that have left rosters than have come into rosters this offseason. Now we know we've got this very truncated offseason this year for several reasons. But right now, there are some concerns league wide of clubs really needing to build out their rosters, and there not being a lot of time for it. Like training camps have started. Like we are in training camps. The league starts in like 40 days. Like it's like not a lot. So time is of the essence. And right now, there's also been a lot of talk about the European transfer market of players coming from Europe towards MLS is pretty shallow right now. There's not a lot of movement. It's a very difficult market. So what I think is going to happen is I think a lot of these teams are going to be kind of riding with what they got, holding on for dear life, and summer is going to be absolutely bonkers. I think there are still a lot of players that are on our free agents that could be looking to jump on rosters. I think it's going to be really, really Wild West out there, because right now you look at it. I mean, we've got it open just for reference, and I mean some of these clubs are totally decimated by the guys that have gone out versus who's come in. Cincinnati comes to mind. Miami, we've talked about them. They have had 21 guys that have left the roster. They have not brought 21 in. And just like down the list, DC United, they've gotten rid of
bad.
15 guys, brought in 3, actually 2, because one of them is re-signing Brendan Hines-Ike. Like it's not great out there. So I just wanted to talk about it because I'm looking at it. It just feels like such a weird off season. It feels like one of these years where like there's a lot of movement that's happening, but a lot of it is out. Like we're talking about all of these like big moves for the Daryl DKs going abroad. And there are clubs that are starting to make signings coming in. We're going to talk about that here in a minute, but it just feels like there is so much going out and teams that are missing pieces that they're going to need to build. So like here in Charlotte, there's a lot of talk about the front line and how there's guys just not there. I'm trying to remain optimistic because I really feel like there is still time. Like there's 5 to 6 weeks. You can sign guys. There can still be trades that happen. There can be free agents that are still signed. But I think that right now, a lot of these clubs are going to have to wait until they're more into the summer. And then I think there's going to be a lot of movement in the player market. And if that's the case, I think we're also going to see one of those, we've talked about Seattle in the past and how they're a team that buys in the summer and flips the script on their season, storms up, and all of a sudden they're like in MLS Cup. There are going to be a lot of teams that are playing that game this year. And I think we could see some teams that aren't at the forefront heading into midseason that make that move that then propels them. And it's going to be very interesting to see what teams can hold on to some roster flexibility, either in allocation money. Because that's the other thing. I haven't seen a lot of exchange of allocation money. Like we were just talking about the move for Kellyn Acosta. Yeah, it's over $1 million, but they're able to do that, that with the Edward Atuesta move. Nashville is sitting on like $3 to $4 million right now in allocation money. Like there is money to be spent out there. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are looking in the summer to make some big splashes.
And Vaughn, that's a good point. My only concern about that is Seattle is typically successful in that. One, because they obviously hit on a big name player. They hit on a few players in the summer. But 2, there's not another 12 teams trying to do the same exact thing and sign a Nico Ladero. I would just go to him because he's just, for some reason, he's the biggest example in my head that year. Like not trying to sign a Nico Ladero and go on a playoff run. this year there's going to be, like, you could arguably probably see close to double-digit teams who are going to make a splash. We already see Toronto's going to make a splash in the summer and try to go on a run. There's going to be other teams who try to make a splash, go on a run, and make the playoffs. But it works for Seattle because most rosters are set. Like, not most rosters are going to be set come the summer. So I'm just interested to see how absolutely, I think, like, just bonkers the second half of this MLS season could be, with teams playing, with roster, like, guys coming in, roster moves happening. Like, it could be a super, super interesting summer, especially leading up into a World Cup, which impacts, I think, all of it at the same exact time.
Yes.
But Sam, did you have anything you want to go into about rosters or just kind of the state of MLS right now?
Oh, dude, I think we're all being really nice when we don't call it a clusterfuck right away. This is bad. Like, you can go through every one of these teams on this list and go, every single team has more outs than ins, except for Charlotte, because they had no one else to go out. Like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then, it just has me worried. What's the quality that we're going to see of play these first couple months if it's going to be like this? It's going to be low, and we're going to be starting to look at some ugly games. A lot of really young players are going to get minutes, but it's not going to be quality minutes. It's not going to really be all that good. We're going to probably see a lot of just debuts and just trying to get through that slog. And then, like you said, with it being a World Cup year and the World Cup being in November, a lot of guys on teams whose teams make the World Cup, they're still going to be fighting for roster spots. And are you going to want to move to MLS mid-season and maybe miss out because you're transferring to a club, have to figure out a new country mid-year, and with like 2 months of quality time to prove to your national team manager that it's worth it to still pick you? Like, that's a lot, and that's a lot on a player. So I think it's going to be a really this might be an ugly season if we don't see some moves real soon, because I don't know, waiting till the summer might be tough.
And we said this before we hit record, but I think that's why, and again, this could be very recency bias if you're listening. I really feel like it could be why we're seeing a lot more homegrown contracts being signed right now, is just because, like, we're going to have to see a lot of young players playing between MLS Next Pro rosters, MLS rosters, eating up minutes, maybe coming in off a bunch of kind of late game appearances and everything like that. And, it's going to be a lot, right? Because we're still going to have COVID impacts. We're still going to have, international World Cup roster qualifying impacts on all these games. And it's going to be, Sam, like you said, like, what's the quality going to be until that summer point hits, when teams are going to try to make moves. And then at the same exact time, like you said, if teams are making moves, then who really wants to come here trying to, like, learn a new system before you're going to go appear in a World Cup, if you're a World Cup player, obviously. But it's interesting, like you said too, Vaughn. We still have time. Fingers crossed that, like Dell said in the chat, Tati Castellanos, he's probably out. James Sands and Tati Castellanos. It's not just about the sheer number of players a club is losing, but like NYCFC hasn't lost a ton of players, but you're losing 2 starters from an MLS Cup championship team. How do you go and replace that too? So a lot of things are going to be in motion, but that's why we also have the preseason to train, to get better, to develop, to hopefully see some of these younger guys get minutes. And Vaughn, this was another thing you wanted to chat about. I know you love a good preseason tournament. I love a good preseason tournament. I have 70 made up preseason tournaments in my head that I want to actually happen. That won't actually happen. But go ahead, Sharon. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've got one of our classic ones. I'm sure Dell listening is obviously here to hear all about the Carolina Challenge Cup. I am ecstatic about it. I'm actually really, really heartbroken. I'm not going to be able to make it there. So yeah, Charleston is like just a couple hours down the road from Charlotte. And so I've been able to make it to some past tournaments. And of course, Charlotte FC finally is going to be in the Carolina Challenge Cup. I'm going to miss it. I am heartbroken. It's not great. But it is an incredible tournament. So exciting. So Carolina Challenge Cup is finally back. They've got the Desert Showcase which is a big one in Tucson. And the one that was announced today that I added to the notes because I don't think Tom had seen it yet is the Coachella Valley Invitational.
Classic.
Which sounds like MLS and Coachella.
Yes.
There's can't be a better pair. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that these tournaments are coming back, that we're finding these preseason tournaments so soon. Like we're not even like 2 months removed from MLS Cup. We're not like 6 weeks removed from MLS Cup.
Yeah.
And here we're going to be having these 3 tournaments right around the corner.
Alex Kynes is still wasted. Okay. Like, I don't know what's going on, but he's still having a good time celebrating. So I don't know what we're doing, but I mean, look, I love preseason tournaments. I'm hoping we get some news about what's the Texas one? Cope Tejas.
Yeah.
Not Tejas. Is it
Sounds
Tejas? Right. I think so.
Sounds right.
I want to hear more news about that because I liked that the Texas teams from all of U.S. soccer got together and played a preseason tournament. I like it. I like kind of regional things to prep your teams. I want to see that for the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metro area. And everyone there, but I think this is all good stuff, and it is exciting because that just means that we're right around the corner from playing meaningful games and meaningful minutes. So let's try to find those streams, and then teams also not wanting us to watch closed off scrimmages. It'll be interesting.
I'd love to actually watch some of these games. Yeah, that'd be ideal. So we didn't have to go into like I remember last year when we were doing our preseason predictions and previews, and we're like, yeah, I think they're playing this formation, but we can't watch the game, so who would know? Like that was half of what we talked about.
Orlando's one of those teams that like they don't like broadcast or stream like any of their games. Like it's like I get why you wouldn't want to, but like I don't know, like every other team does. It's not like it's like
I can't watch the DC games like they don't do those.
I will say one of my favorite things about the Charleston trip that I'm heartbroken is gone. That I don't know if you guys have heard about the Three Lions Pub. So
I like to drink. Tell me more.
So they previously had this place. The stadium was Blackbaud. So Blackbaud Stadium. Cool, like an amazing little for like 4,000 seater soccer specific stadium. I think it was one of the first ones in the US actually.
That's cool.
And behind the stands where the team has like all their offices and stuff, there was the Three Lions Pub, and it was it was a pub. It was a real tavern, but also had like the most unreal collection of soccer memorabilia. Like I'm talking. Cool. Probably 70 different soccer balls all signed from like the 60s World Cups, like insane collectibles, jerseys from every single team in England, tons of MLS memorabilia. It was breathtaking in the middle of Charleston. And unfortunately, it was all sold off in auction.
Holy crap.
And it's all gone. It was a tragedy.
No one told me about this auction.
I'll have to send you some photos from inside the Three Lions Pub. It was really a sight to behold, and a little treasure.
Is that what you're trying to recreate above your garage?
I would love to. I could not have that sort of collection. Like literally, it was 2 stories of just like what is all this stuff doing in Charleston? Yeah. But very sad it's gone.
When we create our MLS brewery that we've talked about, then we'll start building it back
100%,
up.
100%. It's very similar to, I don't know if you guys have heard of Legends in New York City. Like upstairs is more like they show NFL football like games all the time, but downstairs is a soccer pub. And like the bartender who's like the owner, he's this Irish dude who he just screams at the TV all day long. And like I love that guy. Like you've probably seen 7 million people come through his bar, but they have a bunch of like old signed gear. Like you said, Vaughn, from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, stuff like that. They have a Thierry on, like they're apparently a New York Red Bull bar. Didn't know about that until I walked in there with an NYCFC jersey on. Like Thierry Henry, like signed Red Bull stuff everywhere. There's like murals. of just so many players in the bathrooms, and it's just like it's disgusting because it's a New York City bar, but like it's just a cool soccer like spot to go drink, watch a game, and just be having a good time. Obviously pre-COVID, because right now COVID has impacted all of that. But let's finish up with kind of just some big name, not even big name or notable names, just kind of MLS players and MLS teams kind of going after DPs from around the league. And thank you, Vaughn. I appreciate that.
Very good.
I don't want to dive super deep onto any of these if you guys really don't have anything. And I feel like the two that we're going to kind of talk a little bit high level about are the DP additions for Austin and Houston. But first off, Austin, they signed Colombian defensive midfielder Jhojan Valencia from Deportivo Cali. This is a dude who's 25 years old. He's won down in Colombia. He has over 100 games to his career. And from reports I was reading and from kind of conversations I was having privately with people, this is the best defensive midfielder coming out of the Colombian First Division. Don't know how I can translate that to coming into Major League Soccer. I don't know, but I think they paid around $1 million for this guy. I think Austin didn't like what they got year one out of Thomas Pochettino, loan him out, open up a DP spot, go and get Valencia. And I mean, I like it. I like that they're trying to at least change something, right? Fix something, because they didn't like the play on the field. And then similarly to that, I think a high level move where we need to see how this plays out on the MLS field is Houston Dynamo signing Paraguayan striker Sebastian Ferreira from Libertad down in Paraguay. This broke the club transfer fee, that paid transfer fee for $4.3 million from Libertad to Libertad, which is a big deal because Houston's under new ownership. They promise that they're going to spend on players, and they're going out and they're signing a super young Paraguayan striker for a few $1 million. I think that they're kind of acting up with how they spoke and how they're trying to really re-identify themselves within Major League Soccer. This dude is a two-time Golden Boot winner down in Paraguay's First Division. He's won a trophy down there. He also had some time on loan in Liga MX, where he scored about 16 goals in roughly 50 games. So, I mean, this is a young kid. He's 23. I think at the end of the day, he definitely just shows that he knows how to score. And I hope that he can be a driving factor for Houston to kind of start competing with Austin and Dallas for just being relevant in MLS Texas markets. Do you guys have anything you want to say about Valencia or Ferreira? If not, we can dive into a different Ferreira, because FC Dallas, they made Jesus Ferreira the first ever homegrown signing for them to become a designated player in club history. Obviously, U.S. men's national team forward. He will occupy a 86 game.
I got muted there. Sorry, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
That was scary.
So he's going to occupy a young DP spot. 86 games for Dallas, 18 goals, 16 assists. I just like it. I think it's a dude who has really worked hard the past 2 years. I know he had one down year, but he's a really good player, and I'm excited to see Dallas, kind of just, again, investing in their players like they always do, or, sell them off to Europe, pretty much what Dallas does. The last move that I want to talk about is probably maybe the biggest move of the past week is Albert Rusnak, right? We all know Albert Rusnak, the DP midfielder for RSL. Well, he was a free agent and he just signed to the Seattle Sounders. He's been a high-level player for RSL since he joined in 2017, really. I think when he was younger, he needed to develop a little bit more to be consistent, but I really think the past year, 2 years has been really good for him. He's developed into a full Slovakian international. He's played close to 150 games for RSL, 42 goals and 39 assists during his time there. I just don't know about the fit. He's joining a Seattle Sounders team that has Nico Ladera, Joao Paulo, Christian Roldan, obviously Danny Leyva and Josh Atencio not really playing his position, but it's a pretty stockpiled midfield. So Vaughn, I'm going to turn it to you. Everyone's saying like Rusnak makes the Sounders team better. Obviously, yes, you add player of quality, you add a DP, it makes a roster better. But do you see him playing at the same exact time with Ladero, with Roldan, with Paulo, all of that going on?
I think in this league, you've got to establish depth, right? Like we've seen what happened last year. Seattle was still very, very good, and that was with a lot of time of missing Ladero and missing Jordan Morris. This team is going to have Jordan Morris, Nico Ladero, Albert Rusnak, Raul Ruidiaz, MVP level João Paulo, Christian Roldan, Alex Roldan, Defender of the Year, Yaimar Andrade. They've got Stephen Fry. Like, this team is loaded. Like, that's what scares me, is that they are going to be starting with all of that. And we just talked about how they've been known for like adding pieces as the year goes on, right? So like that's what absolutely scares me, is that right now Seattle is just loaded and looking super, super strong. So yeah, and that's my opinion on the Rusnak move, because it's absurd.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good move for Seattle, and honestly, like you just said, what I clamored for with a lot of teams last year was depth. And for Seattle to be coming in so early with this kind of power play, what I would say, picking up a DP on a free, is really good for them. And it'll give the rest of the players the opportunity to get rest and play for what will probably be a really long season, as well as condensed. That's the big thing with depth this year, is that we're going to be playing a lot of games a lot closer together, and it's going to suck.
Well, and it's also that they're going to have the flexibility of moving pieces in and out, right? Like that you could end up having a Rusnak that comes off the bench is scary. That you can have Jordan Morris come off the bench is scary. Like that they are going to have layers to the team. And what team would not want to add a player of Rusnak's level?
Yes.
And that Seattle is doing that when they've already got a team that is strong. And right now, right, the expectation is last year was a down year for them. They didn't make MLS Cup. Like they had made 4 of the last 5. So to be able to do that for the fan base as well and say, no, we're still going to make a big signing. We're going to use everything that's available to us. And for a player like Rusnak to want to go there, right? Like, see, all the people that were in RSL are just shifting up to Seattle right now. So just is what it is there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vaughn, do you have anything else to add?
I think that's
on
it.
Anything?
We lost Tom. Tom's just gone. He bailed.
All right, so let's have a party. We're gonna have a good time.
This is the time we can badmouth it. No, we would not do that to Tom.
So New York City. God, that team.
Castellanos, James Sands, just all the hot words.
James Sands going to Scotland. Tom can't stop me now.
All right. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
I think I'm happy where we left it today.
All right. Well, to all you listeners out there, go ahead and do that thing of supporting us on Patreon. Thank you to Soccer 90 for sponsoring this episode. Go ahead, use code MLS Aces at Soccer 90. Check us out online. If you want to watch this whole thing back again, go find us on YouTube, subscribe there. And yeah, I think I hit all of the required things. So until next time, thank you everyone for joining MLS Aces.